is actually religious freedom?
From a human rights perspective, we refer to the right to freedom of religion or belief. So it's a human rights that protects equally the rights of believers as well as non-believers, religious as well as secular convictions. That's really important in international human rights law. And secondly, it's a right that combines the protection of the inner dimension, like your freedom of conscience, your right to believe something or not to believe something, and your right to practice what you believe in or don't believe. This inner dimension, what you believe or not believe, can never be infringed upon. But the right to practice and to show and to manifest your belief might in some situations be constrained, be limited, but only because of the compelling and equal rights of other human beings, of other human rights concerns. So you have the internal and the external dimension, and you have the right then also for your individual practice as well as your collective practice together with others, such as in religious assemblies, in religious ceremonies. And then you have the public and the private dimension. You can practice your religion or belief both in public and private. So these are different actions, aspects of freedom of religion or belief as a human right, but it's not a right that can be exercised without concern for the rights of others. So in some situations it has to be limited. For instance, on the basis because of the right of women or because of other human rights, such as freedom to protection against religious hatred, etc. So it's not a limitless right, but it's a very strong human rights with these different dimensions.
What is the relevance of freedom of religion and beliefs and religious diversity?
Well, first of all, freedom of religion or belief as a human right protects the individual and the individual's right to both have and not to have a religious belief, but also to practice one's belief alone, but also in community with others, like collectively. So both in private and in public, but it's not a limitless right. So it gives a profound protection of, let's call it religious or non-religious belief. That can manifest itself in various ways. For instance, a lot of people practice together with others in, for instance, religious buildings like Buddhist or Hindu temples, the mosques for the Muslims, synagogues for the Jews, churches for different Christian traditions, etc. And that is actually protected by freedom of religion or belief as a human right, the right to build and to use religious buildings together with others, and to appoint religious leaders. But it's a lot of groups who don't have the possibility to make religious buildings because they don't have the funding, there are not many enough, or there are constraints in the specific country, so there will always be an invisible diversity that you cannot see through buildings. However, the buildings really show in most countries a rich diversity, both throughout history and in current society. So, but at the same time, it's important to remember that there is always a diversity that you cannot really see through buildings, but through maybe individual clothing, individual practices, and even that can be constrained of various reasons. So fundamentally, human rights protect the right to be different and to have a religious belief and not a religious belief, but also the right to practice it and to show it. But then again, on the other hand, that right can be limited. For instance, you cannot do anything in the name of religion. For instance, if you have a practice which implies that you restrict the fundamental rights and freedom of others, then the state has a duty even to limit that practice. Freedom of religion or belief is a human right that protects the right to be different, basically, to have a different religious identity than the majority, but also to practice one's religion as long as it doesn't restrict the fundamental rights and freedoms of others. So this is an individual human right, but it's also a right that is practiced often together with others. So faith communities and churches practice the right of their individual members, for instance, by building a church, a mosque, a temple, a synagogue, etc. but also by appointing religious leaders that represent the group of individuals. So there's a strong relationship between the individual right to freedom of religion and the collective practice on behalf of the different individual members.